In the previous video, we looked at how to create the Gallons to Liters app using the storyboard. Let's look at how to create it using SwiftUI. So in Xcode, I'm going to go to the File menu and choose New, and we'll choose a new project. We want to create an app. Click Next. O2B, SwiftUI, Gallons to Liters. So our interface here is going to be SwiftUI. So if you have Storyboard, make sure you change that to SwiftUI, and we'll click Next. Decide where you want to save it, and say Create. So here's our SwiftUI Gallons to Liters project. If you look over on the left-hand side, you'll see our structure of the project. Notice we no longer have a storyboard. Instead, what we have is content view. And we see the content view file here. And then on the right-hand side, we see a preview of what our interface is going to look like. So by default, we have a structure of content view, which is a type view. And in there is our variable body of some view. And then inside those brackets is where we create the interface. Now, if you want to have more than one object, it needs to be in a vertical stack or a horizontal stack. And there's also a Z stack where we can put objects on top of one another. But in this V stack, we have an image, which is this little globe. And we have text that says Hello World. And then there's padding around that. So we're going to see this dot attribute used throughout our controls here. Now we're creating the whole view or interface with code. But fortunately, we have a visual display of what that looks like. So our image takes a system name, in this case it's globe, and then we have these attributes of dot image scale being dot large and dot foreground color being dot accent color. So we could change this and say I want this to be red. And you see now our little globe is changed to red. So the preview is very instantaneous as we make changes to the code. I can say hello SMCC, and it changed immediately. Okay, so we're going to create our interface for that Gallons to Liters app that we created earlier using Storyboard. I'm going to get rid of the image. And we'll leave the text there, but I'm going to change the text to our title, which is going to be Gallons to Liters. And then I can make some attributes here. So we're going to do dot bold, make this bold. And you see it bolds up a little bit there. And then I'm also going to do a dot, we'll do a dot font. And then I'm going to add a dot title, our closing parenthesis. I notice that now that got much bigger. That dot title is of a title weight or title size. That looks pretty good. It's very similar to what we had in the storyboard. Only there we put it a little bit higher, and we're going to move it up as time goes by. So I'm going to add another object below that. Actually, it's going to be a pair of objects. I want some text or a label, and then a text field where the user can enter the number of gallons. So I'm going to use text again. And this time it'll be enter number of gallons. I'm going to do a colon and a space. And so there's my text. Need a space between number and of. And then I want the text field to be to the right of that. And so where we have a vertical stack where things are stacked on top of one another, we can have a horizontal stack where things are going from left to right. So I'm going to take that text view of enter number of gallons and put it in an H stack. And I'll add an attribute here of alignment. And we'll go ahead and just center that. So alignment.center. I'm also going to add an attribute here of spacing. And we'll do 1.0. That's going to give us a little bit of space in between the objects of the stack. Now in the stack, I need to have a curly bracket, and then I need another curly bracket and put that after my text. I want the text to be inside that stack. Okay, I'm going to just simply spread this out a little bit so it all stays in that one line. And so, after the text here, I want a text field. Now, let me show another way to do this rather than just typing in. We have our library that we've seen before. And so in the library, I can also pull in different views. And if I type in text up at the top, I can see I got a secure field, a text editor, and a text field. I want the text field. So I'm going to take the text field and just drag it in here. It gives me a placeholder, which is going to be kind of something that shows up when there's nothing in the text field. So I'm just going to put in here for the text holder, enter, and we'll use the pound sign or number sign. That needs to be a string, so I'm going to put that in quotes. And then the text that I want to have show up here is going to be a value. This is going to be a variable. So I need to create the variable first. So to create a variable, I'm going to go inside my struct for the content view at state private var. I'm going to name my variable gallons, and it's going to equal 3.5. That's the value we used previously in the storyboard. Then for text, I can come in here and say $gallons. And that then will take the value of gallons. Oh, and one thing I need to do here is my value, since it's a string variable, needs to be in quotes. So a little error goes away, and I see 3.5 here. Let's add some more attributes to the text field. I did an option click on the plus sign, so my library stays open. So we had this little icon over here on the far left that shows the different views we have in our library. This one shows the modifiers in the library. And so if I'm in the text field, I can see the modifiers that are part of the text field. And these are grouped together by different types of modifiers. So here's the layout modifiers in purple. I'm going to come down and choose padding. So it adds a dot padding and says all. And I'm going to put this on the next line, put all the modifiers after the view. As I add modifiers to a control, we have basically an attributes panel over here that in the storyboard showed us a whole bunch of stuff. I kind of like it here in the SwiftUI. It only shows the attributes we've applied. So I see padding here, and I can decide how I want to add that padding to the view. I only want to add padding to the right. And I'm going to add 5. That's going to put a little space for me on the right-hand side. Now I can also add modifiers here in the attributes panel. There's a little drop down here for add modifier. Again, I can choose one, or I can type something in. So I want to use a frame. So I'm going to find the frame modifier. And here we can give that text field a width and a height. I want it to be 100.0. And the height to be 35.0. I can get rid of the question mark there. It's not an optional. And then the alignment, we could say dot trailing. I'm going to add another modifier. This time I want to change the background. So I just start to type background. I can choose, there's different things here as far as background. I'm just going to click background here. Now the background actually was attached to the horizontal stack. I'm going to copy and paste that here for our field. So right now our field is blue. I want to change that. So I can come down here and choose, I want to do custom. And the custom, I'm going to choose basically kind of a light yellow. That's pretty much what I want. Then I'll add another modifier. I'm going to look for alignment. I want the multi-line text alignment. So instead of dot leading, I'm going to choose trailing. And that's going to put the number right aligned in my text box. Now, when I work with numbers in text fields, I like to have them aligned on the right. It's just kind of a personal preference thing. Okay, so that's our horizontal stack. Let's add a button. I want the button to come below these two, so I'm going to go outside my horizontal stack. And we'll come over to our library. I'm going to go back to the views, grab a button, and drag a button in below our horizontal stack. Now the first thing we have here is what's the title or the caption of that button. So I'm going to enter convert to leaders. We see that show up there. And then we have our action. So not only are we creating the interface here, we can also code what this button does. We're going to come back and work on that a little bit later. For now, though, I want to change some attributes for the button. So make sure I'm within my button. I'm going to highlight the button. I'm going to change the padding of my button to be 12 all the way around. You're seeing that move down a little bit. And we'll check leading, trailing, top, and bottom. I want to change the background color of this. Again, we'll go back, background. And the background is actually a view. In this case, the default here is blue. I'm going to keep that as blue, but my text is blue. So I also need to change the foreground color. Let's make it white. And I'm going to do a little corner radius on the button, give it some nice rounded corners. Probably 8 to 10 is a good number there. I'm going to go 9. And then below that, I want to have another H stack. And so what I'm going to do is copy this H stack we did above and paste it in after the button. I'm going to change the text to equivalent number of leaders. We'll change the text field placeholder to be equal liters. And I want to change the text here from gallons to liters. So I'm going to do a variable called $liters. We're going to get an error because that doesn't exist at the moment. I need to come back up and create that variable. So at state private var, let's call this liters. And I'm going to start with, let's do a null string, just nothing in it. Or let's do a question mark. Initially, we don't know what that is until they click the button. So everything else looks good there. Now, one more thing I'd like to do is I want to move this up. So we can also add a spacer. And a spacer will take up as much space as it needs to fill the view. So by doing that, it pushed everything up. Well, we have a padding property down here for our V stack. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to add some padding up here at the top only. In fact, let's make this about 50, and that'll push it down. let's kind of compare where we put this in our storyboard. Now, the one thing we have to do yet is we have this button. We need to type in some code for our action. What do we want this button to do when the user clicks it? So I'll go to action, and we'll use that if let gallons equals double gallons. And what we want to have happen here is that liters, this is going to be our variable we declared at the top, liters then is going to equal gallons times 3.7854. I like to have that be just a decimal, maybe 2 decimals or 1 decimal. And notice that we're getting error here because we're trying to assign a double value to a string variable. So I need to convert this to a string anyway. So let's do string, but then let's also add a format value here. Oops. Need a colon, %.2f, and a comma. And so now that's going to give us 2 decimal places, and I'm missing a parenthesis. Should take care of a little error there. So this will only happen if there's a valid value in gallons that can be converted to double. If there's not, we want to do something else. And that something else will be liters equals, and we'll say NaN, not a number. So now we have our interface, we have our code for this button, all in the same file. Notice this is all taking place in a struct of our current view. I want to show there's one more struct here. This struct down here controls the preview for our right-hand side. You can actually have more than one preview. So I could do a preview here of not only an iPhone, but may also want to do a preview for an iPad. We can actually have them both showing up here. I'm not going to bother to do that in this example. We have a way to run this in our emulator. Brings up the emulator, it's loading in. There is my project. I've got 3.5. I'm going to click convert to liters, and I get 13.25. We saw earlier that's the correct result. If I change this to nothing and say convert to liters, I get that not a number. Well, this second N should be uppercase. So let's just fix that. So now if I have nothing in there, convert to liters, I get not a number error. If I say 10, we should get 37.85. That's what we get. And if I put in text such as ABC that we looked at earlier, convert to liters, again, not a number. So that's all working. I'm going to stop my emulator. But I also want to show you over here on our preview, sometimes the preview will pause and things may not reflect changes immediately that you make over in the code. So you might always want to take a look at that. You can click this little continue button. It's going to redo the preview, so make sure everything is up to date. But down here at the bottom, there's a little run button down here. And this preview functions as an emulator. So I can click on it and then click convert to liters, and it does the math for us and does the display. So you don't have to run the emulator when you're working in SwiftUI. In most cases, you can test it here in the preview. So that's how we do this project using SwiftUI. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the iOS app development cohort playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.